How's it going, everyone? Got another book review today, but this one is actually a graphic novel. So less of a book and more of an adventure. And if if graphic novels aren't your thing, if that's strike one, get ready for strike two. It's also science fiction. But if you're on this channel and you're not at least sometimes seeking things that make you uncomfortable, you might be on the wrong channel. Maybe not, but maybe so. This is a really, really interesting one. And not just visually. It's not just visually appealing. What it does to your perspective, or what it can do to your perspective, or the things that you might have already perceived that it will resonate with, are very intriguing. It is, I would say, it's a cross between like PKD and between Philip K. Dick and Robert Anton Wilson. It is like Valis meets Cosmic Trigger is probably the best way I could describe this. It's very, very interesting. It's very intriguing. It starts off kind of weird if you're not into sci-fi stuff. Admittedly, I'm not super, super into the whole like Star Trek, Star Wars thing. At least I didn't used to be. I see the wisdom in it now, but I used to avoid that stuff like the plague just because it had no relevance, I didn't think. But it starts off a little bit futuristic, but it's slowly... The thing about this one is it's kind of... It time winds and weaves. The first time I read through it, I thought that it was taking place in the past, present, and future, like all at once. But I would say now that it's just all time, all at once. It's hard to explain. The title Chronosis is a reference to a time infection or a time virus, but it's also a nod to the term gnosis, and its relationship to time. So let's go ahead and get started. There's no table of contents in this one, but here's the graphic image on the cover. The graphic image. All right. The opening has a quote here that I quite liked, especially the first line of. The first line means multiple things. And this is part of what I mean when I say nothing ever just means anything. No one thing ever just means any one thing. One example of that is this sentence here. Nothing comes to being in time. That also means that nothing comes into being with time. But it also means that nothing comes to being in time. Rather, in each thing, time comes to being anew, and does so immediately from out of eternity. F.W.J. Schelling. Now, what I think I'll do is I think I'll read like the first dozen pages of this or so. So technically 13, because this is a page here. Okay? All right. So, here we have some darkness. And then we have some sort of light fracturing through. Here's the narration here. No one had ever guessed at what fossils might intimate, nor had anyone in the incalculable gulf of space ever seen one. Before the meaning of time was even known, everything, whether a second or an eternity, was but a fleeting moment. The sudden flash of a rupture in the fabric of existence could last the age of the universe. Off man's beaten track, far removed from even the untrodden paths of celestial bodies, space reigned supreme. Unresponsive, unimagined, and unsimulated, it harbored a pantheon of things defiantly unwilling to be born or distinguished. Yet, what is a being unborn to do? Grow nails to scratch the inside of the womb that admits nothing new. Become a pressurized gas in a sealed chamber. Overwhelm the receptacle. Fermenting, galvanizing, yet detached even from myself. This is how I exhumed myself. From the obsidian slab, this universal void that weighed upon me, and preventing me from having a face. I am used to not having a face, only a panoply of masks. After all, I broke away by pretending that I was nothing. I still wear that mask to go unnoticed. My jailbreak was instantaneous. For you, it might take an aeon. And then it says in one text, shrouds of being, I am time. I could have read it differently, but I chose to read it that way. Then there is this image here. Then there is a hand grasping, a hand of darkness reaching from a sort of inky slab or glob, which you'll understand if you read this book. I pretended I was locked in a prison. I made a mock escape. This is useful. I pretended I was locked in a prison. I made a mock escape. Sometimes it is best to disclose how you unbox yourself. A show of cunning and force. An inspiring lesson for those who wear my masks. But I cannot be contained. I am that for which all wardens are prisoners. Unwavering, endless, every limb one whole. No one was ever, or will I be. No one was ever, or will be. And past, and all past and future are null. Then there's this imagery here. Great for path working. The textures. Titillating. This imagery here. Not sure if you can zoom in, so I'll zoom in for you. I searched myself. No boundary, no edge at which to begin or end. Numbers are deceiving, but this example should suffice. 10 to the 10th, 15th years. Can you see that? And the interesting thing is if you add 10, 10, and 15 numerologically, so 10 is 1 because it's 1 and 0. You reduce the numbers. 1 plus 1 plus 15 is 8, which is an infinity symbol. Just a little bit of madness that comes from reading things like this. From what might loosely be called now, in virtue of a highly improbable anomaly, out of this uniform broth, infants will be born. Sentients, my children. Alone and isolated within the bounds of their senses and their sensible universe. They will never notice the presence of people like them in another region, separated from them by light years. What counts as 9 billion years into the future for one tribe in this eternal forest? For another tribe is 9 billion years into the past. Oh, I should show you that page here. This is who's speaking. This is the being who crawled out of the slab, I believe. last page that I will read. Well, that I will read in chronology. There's a few more pictures I'll show you, and there's a few more interesting tidbits I'll read, but other than that. To enter the forest of worlds is a cruel ordeal for any tribe. A vast emptiness littered with illusions of sense, and just a few scarce signposts. All right. Just to give you some context, I will show you a few more images. I believe this one is actually the one on the next page. There's lots of stuff going on with the textures and the tones. Okay. The next interesting tidbit comes later. One of the characters says this: It is a blissful thing to sit atop the corpses of your past, rather than carrying their dead weight. Blessed are those who do not live in time, but live as if they were time, like a tide progressively washing the scene of carnage from the shores of life. There's a very interesting image here. Sort of a memory of a mandrake man of some sort, perhaps. The next tidbit. Yeah, there are some very interesting tones and textures in this work. The next section, oh, it was way back here. Sorry about that. The next section I thought was interesting. There is someone who is, we'll say they're climbing a mountain. And here's what the narrative is. Someone is clinging to a rock, and there's a fossil that is right above them. In suspense, time baits the mind. The fossil, which is what is in the rock here, there's a fossil. But also this is conceptually and metaphorically speaking as well. In suspense, time baits the mind. The fossil provokes the time-bound mind to reconfigure what has been and rewrite what is yet to come. So, there's somewhat of a relevance to Robert Anton Wilson here in relation to part of the mind being a time-binding circuit. I'm pretty sure that's Wilson. If it was Leary, I'm not sure if that was Leary. I'm pretty sure Wilson came up with that terminology, but perhaps not. But this idea that by reconfiguring what has been is related to rewriting what has yet to come is an intriguing concept, and it also makes me wonder if they are, what would you call that, mutually exclusive or not. So that is very, very interesting. In suspense, time baits the mind. The fossil provokes the time-bound mind to reconfigure what has been and rewrite what is yet to come. Now remember, one of the first things that is said in this work is that, how did they say it? No one had ever guessed at what fossils might intimate. And we can think of this word intimate in this sense as similar to imitate. So there is a lot there. And I've only read a few bubbles. So naturally, there's going to be more than that here. Here's another image here of a green being seemingly descending down a purple staircase. Kabbalists, I hope you recognize. There is other meaning there, but this channel is loosely based on Kabbalah. So a green force descending down a purple stairway is an interesting concept. So here, there is another narrative about this being entering a purple tunnel and then descending down a purple staircase. In walking this circle, we continue to afford them endless chances. Perhaps we should remove their every memory of living. Those who are already dead neither covet life nor see death as a peril. Or furnish them with a new memory. Let them believe that they are in a new world, reincarnated after death. But what kind of solution is it to exchange one illusion for another? Even better, let them remember not into which world of slavery they have been born. Confound their memories without discrimination. Let all worlds commingle. Or perhaps the ultimate arbitrage. Efface the memory of the beginning of the universe. Wipe the beginning of this world from each and every memory. And when the beginning is deleted, when the universe no longer recalls its inception, it shall be born with new inhabitants. The loss, the annulment of a single origin is consistent with many possible ends. Erase the beginning of this world and bask in the possibilities of all others. For the mission is not to give tribes false hope, but to deprive them of those comforts that delude them. All right. Was there anything else? Here's a nice little image here. This is like sort of the last page. So, there is a lot going on. At the very end, there's some like alternate art work for the cover, and there's some interviews by the artists where they share some insights on what it means to be an artist and to create a novel and a graphic novel at that. This quote here says, for instance, "It was because of comics that I was able to intuit so easily some of the fundamental criteria for abstraction within artistic modernism when I discovered it." And then they say, "Immense possibilities are afforded by this form, which is entirely capable of producing new horizons for thought." And then there's some conceptual sketches and things like that. But I do recommend this one. Even if you're not into the whole sci-fi thing, it's not that sci-fi. Like, it's really no more sci-fi than the Matrix is. And I would say maybe only 2/3 of it relates to a different time and place. There is a section that relates to Earth. There are humans in this book. So, yeah. I do recommend this one. Even if you just sort of flip through some of the imagery. This will perhaps shift some strings for you. And if you like Philip K. Dick, if you like Robert Anton Wilson, I think this will be right up your alley. So check it out if it sounds interesting, or check it out if it sounds anti-interesting. Anyway, I hope you have a good rest of the day, or evening, or afternoon, whatever time it is there. I hope you have a good rest of the week, and let me know if you have any questions or comments or concerns below. Feel free to email me as usual, and yeah, have a good rest of your time on this rock that is whizzing through the thing that we call space. See you in the next one.